why is Santa Claus such a good lover?
Go on.
He only comes once a year, but by God, he fills your stockings.
And cut. Cut.
Cut. Definitely cut.
You are aware that some people might be under 18 that listen to this, or 21.
Well, they shouldn't. It does say fruity language.
Yeah, even so.
Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Ho.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings.
Hello, Julian.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, I've listened to an episode of Veterinary Ramblings. I seriously hope nobody else does.
Oh, I mean, it's awful, isn't it?
I was thinking, actually, we joke. I mean, I was thinking about what a year we've had. It's
been amazing, hasn't it? We've spoken to some really interesting and quite incredible characters, haven't we, Mike?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that got me was some of the interesting life stories we've had. Do you remember Sarah Cotton?
Yeah, I remember Sarah Cotton. Yeah, so she was the fire person, wasn't she? Fireman, woman who fell off a bridge and broke her back.
That's right.
Incredible story. How long was it after the doctor had told her she must never ever garden or swim that she started a gardening job and swam the channel?
Yeah.
It was. And you made that bit of a gaff when you were talking to her.
No, I didn't.
Do you remember it?
No, I didn't.
No, I think we'll watch the clip. I'm sure you made a bit of a gaff when you were talking to her.
But I want to come back to this accident because this is a major trauma. This is a turning point in your life, and it's difficult sometimes to see silver linings when the shit has literally hit the fan and you're battling and it hurts and it's painful. It's a long way ahead, and it's difficult to see quite where you're heading to. Was there anything that you fell back on, or was there a particular therapy that you really clung to that sort of helped drive you through this?
Well, I mean, I think fell back on and drive through are probably the wrong terms to use on them.
I think that's probably
apologise. Yeah, my colleague there, Sarah.
Sorry.
There were several things. I mean, I'm an upbeat sort of person anyway, and I was a triathlete.
Right.
But through all of this, I've had animals. I mean, I had 4 dogs at the time of my accident.
Mm-hmm.
So I was super fit, running, cycling, tremendous group of friends, and 4 little dogs that had to be walked.
Right.
No matter what state I was in when I came out of hospital, they wanted a walk. So I had to get up and do stuff, not one to sit about anyway. I've always had an animal of some sort, dogs primarily in the last 30 years, but
right.
And always little rescue dogs. I've got pigeons at the moment, but
they don't need walks on a daily basis. No, you're okay with those, Sarah. That's absolutely fine.
But yeah, little dogs and keeping fit. I swim a lot. After my accident, the doctors said to me, because I struggle with really bad backache, or at least I did.
So you're not going to ride a bike and you're not going to go running?
Well, you say that.
Okay.
And here's where it gets interesting.
The doctor said to me, I got backache all the time, even when I swim, which was, I loved swimming and running and all this sort of thing. And he said, well, really, no swimming. If you must swim, a little bit of gentle backstroke, and no gardening, really, because that's not good for your back. So obviously now I'm working as a gardener, and swimming was the only thing I could do out of the triathlon that I was left with.
So how long after he said no swimming?
Yeah, did you
swim the channel?
Yeah, I swam the channel. Well, I mean, you don't just. Well, I mean, it was some years later, but I sort of built up to that. I got back into swimming, and I just started. I can't not swim. I mean, that's just part of my DNA is being a swimmer. So I started doing Pilates to strengthen my core muscles that I thought would help support my back. You know, I was trying to, I'm not one who's sort of gobbling painkillers and sitting back and thinking, oh, well, the doctor says actually I better not. I'll just sit and watch telly all day. You know, that I just can't do that. So I thought, well, there's got to be another way. So I strengthened my core muscles by doing Pilates, and I just massively upped the swimming. A ridiculous amount.
Massively up to the swimming. So
yeah.
So Julian said that swam the channel, and I've got a feeling he's not joking.
No, he's not. He's not.
So you went from potentially, well, definitely life-changing injuries to swimming the channel, which for our listeners who are unaware is a strip of water between England and France.
Keeps the little blighters away. That's what I say.
It's protected. It's protected our shores from a lot of people, hasn't it? Like
it's protected our shores from 55 BC.
Yeah. Oh. And the Spanish Armada and Hitler, and didn't do much good against the Vikings, though, did it? But anyway, that's another story.
Not a lot.
It's 21 miles.
It's 21 miles.
Is 21 miles, and it's
open water ocean swim of 21 miles.
Yeah,
and it's not warm, is it?
There's shipping lanes in the world, and cold water.
Sarah, just goes to show what you can achieve when you set your mind to it.
You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Hey, talking of which, do you remember we spoke to that vet student who had set his mind to becoming a vet, even though he had no GCSEs?
Jamil Dowling,
yeah. He phoned us first from Armenia, where he was doing his travels, and said, "Can I come on veterinary ramblings?"
Something like that.
And then we next heard of him escaping from India or something. There was some story about that, wasn't there?
I can't remember, but I think we've got a clip that will remind us.
Let's watch that.
Because you're wagging off school, you're taking exams to suit yourself. When did you think you fancied becoming a vet?
I mean, since always, I knew I wanted to work with animals in the conservation, wildlife sort of realm.
Okay.
If it was as a vet or as a biologist, I mean, I guess it was always as a vet, but, you know, when you're young, it's not 100% clear yet. And especially how the vet is sold in the UK, as in like what your standard vet does in the UK. I guess the path I kind of want to go down isn't your standard one. So ended up leaving Spain with no qualifications. Or I had them, but I didn't get them in paper or whatever. So in theory, I was going to an international school in India and getting my IGCSEs there, and eventually A levels. But it didn't work out with my dad. He stopped paying the fees. They threatened with handing me over to the police or something. Mum got involved. She had no money. Embassy repatriated me, the British embassy, and they said, right, we can put you on a plane to Spain back to your mum, or we can put you on a plane to Heathrow and see what happens. I knew from what the Spanish education was, and I think I was 17 then. Yeah, 17. And I knew that if I went back to Spain, that's the end of it. Like, I definitely wouldn't get into vet med, just because of how the education system and stuff works. So I was like, send me back to London. In theory, somebody from the embassy was going to pick me up. No one did. So I arrived at Heathrow, went to the asylum seekers by accident. They sent me to Hillingdon Borough. I got classified as an asylum seeker with a British passport somehow. So I got put in with asylum seekers from Iran, Syria and stuff, which is incredible. Like, you know, the stories you could hear from them and stuff was really eye-opening at 17. And then basically, since the moment I got back, which was around October, I think 2016, maybe 2016, I was like, right, what do I need to do to get into vet school? I need to get GCSEs, minimum 5. And then on top of that, I also need to get my ASs and A2s, and I need to do some placements. So I was like, well, you know, A-levels, GCSEs and ASs, they're only escalations of one of the other, right? So I might as well do them all in 1 year together. Like, it should be feasible, right? If I know A2s, I should be able to do GCSEs.
Yeah, I see the logic there.
I do see
Yeah,
the logic. Yeah,
The
it's like saying, look, I can make a white bread roll, so I may as well make a croissant. Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't take into account GCSEs dumbed down from A levels in some bits. So you kind of need to learn the mark scheme to that level. But I think it was something like 56 exams in one exam period. So like when exams come up, I had 3 exams in one day at one point. My cheat was that I took Spanish A level. I didn't even open a book. I just went into the exam and I got an A. Thank God for that. So I had to do like I was already pushing it, but I ended up getting enough to get onto the Gateway program for Bristol. But during the time waiting to hear back from that, I couldn't really take the stress of just sitting around and waiting, because I was adamant that I was going to retake if they'd went bad and then get in the next year and keep applying until they were sick of rejecting me, and then they'd have to say yes, just not do the paperwork. So I buggered off to South Korea for a month or 2. And went around backpacking there, spearfishing for my food, and kind of just sleeping on the street and stuff.
Yeah, so Jamil's worked with some really impressive animals, hasn't he?
Oh, it really has. Very jealous about that.
Talking about that, I mean, he touched there in the full episode about working with elephants, and as we all know, elephants never forget.
No, that's what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
I bet all the other animals do, don't they?
No, I know another one that doesn't forget.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Don't you remember when we had Mark Hedberg in talking about
the crocodile? The crocodile. The emasculated crocodile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, expat vet Mark Hedberg. Let's have a listen to that clip about the crocodile.
That was great.
And so it was purely small animal you were doing, companion animal.
Yeah, most of it. We had occasional stuff that came in that was a little bit unusual. I mean, my week 6 on the job, the driver comes in with the cell phone because, of course, the sheikh, the prince, the big boss doesn't come in. He sends in the driver with the cell phone, and then hi, this is Dr. Mark. Can I help you? And so basically, he says, well, yeah, we have this crocodile. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and so okay, what's wrong with the crocodile? Said, well, he's 2 meters long and really mean. I can't fix that. What's his medical problem?
So what was his medical problem?
He had a prolapsed penis, if I'm allowed to say that on Spotify and YouTube and all that.
We've said worse.
Very good.
Yeah.
So basically, due to constipation, the organ had prolapse, it became injured, and a partial amputation was required.
I was going to say that's not too difficult, actually. Amputation of it. Well, I've not done a crocodilian. I've done a few other reptile penal ectomies. Bobbits, I think they call it.
Yes, 6 weeks into my first job after university, sole charge vet, Western Saudi Arabia, 1,200 kilometers from the nearest referral hospital.
Yeah. That's
my old exotics professor, and went, well,
and you did a John Wayne Bobbitt on a 2-meter crocodile,
pretty much under local.
Oh.
Was it any less wild afterwards?
No, he's hated me ever since. And to be fair, I can't really blame him.
No,
but
really.
Because the exotics vet told me that the ketamine was, general anesthesia was really going to be a problem because we were in the rather far away from, modern monitoring equipment and ventilators and things like that, because we were next to a swimming pool about 20 kilometers north of Jeddah. So yeah, we grabbed him, we tied him up, we gave him a truckload of local, covered his eyes, turned him upside down, and went snippety snip.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Easy. Gosh.
I'm not surprised he didn't like you afterwards.
Yeah. And well, to be fair, he would have cheerfully returned the favor if he could. So, fair is fair,
And he wouldn't have used local, would he?
How many reunions have you attended with him?
A couple, actually. A few January 2020, just before the pandemic, I actually got invited back.
Right.
Not for him, but for another patient. But they remembered me years later and said, "Hey, I want to come in." And
yeah. So did you meet the crocodile again?
Oh, I did.
And he remembered you.
He remembers. So anyone that tells you reptiles are stupid and slow and forget, oh no.
Oh, wow.
They just kind of float in the pool and they watch you walking by. And so, yep, you remember me.
Wow.
But it was a bit bigger then as well, wasn't it? Because they carry on growing throughout life, I think, don't they? Crocodiles.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't wander over with a tape measure. I will be honest.
Did you not? Did not? Okay.
No, I pushed my luck enough the first time.
Oh, you didn't throw him a fish or anything? What did you say, Julian?
As I can't compete with that. A crocodile penis amputation, that's pretty out there, isn't it?
It's pretty radical surgery, isn't it?
It's very good for free beers with the U.S. Embassy Marines.
Why? Because they want their penises amputating?
Apparently, if you tell a story they can't top, you get a beer.
Ah.
Okay, so that would do it.
Hey, I didn't make the rules, but I accept it.
Do you think Mark was very empathetic towards the crocodile there?
I don't think he had any empathy. I don't think crocodiles had empathy anyway. They always talk about crocodile tears, don't they?
Well, they do, don't they? But yeah, okay. So if we extrapolate that, if crocodiles don't have empathy, what about cats and dogs?
Now, Mike, you know that cats and dogs do, don't you? Because we spoke to that lovely Karen Highstand. And she's doing a PhD, isn't she?
She is, absolutely. And how she's researching empathy in cats and dogs and comparing them to human children's assessment of empathy. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. She spoke to us a lot about non-verbal communication as well, didn't she?
Yeah. Let's dip back into that interview and have a listen to what she's got to say.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, I mean, the work I'm doing is the work looking at whether dogs and cats have these capacities. One quite fun thing is, of course, there's a wealth of research in children, pre-verbal children, so 1 to 2 year old kids, looking at empathy development. So because they're pre-verbal, they are, they're not, lots of empathy research in humans is all about self-report, the typical psychology stuff. You tell us what you're thinking and what you're feeling. But of course, you can't do that with little kids, because if they can't tell you, then they can't. So they have to get a bit more clever with designing experiments which use their behavior and their actions. And luckily, we can use those same experiments then in non-verbal non-humans, so cats and dogs. So that's one aspect of what I've done, which was experiments done in 2013 in children, where the experimenter faked a knee injury as if they'd banged their knee and were really in pain. And they watched what the little kids did in response to that. And if the kids went up to the person and said, and patted their shoulder or gave them a toy or rubbed their knee, they called that empathy. And they showed that children developed empathy anywhere between 18 months and 2 years of age, which was fun for me, because when I started this PhD, I had an 18-month-old daughter, and I watched her go through all the stages of that study, which was quite fun as she grew up. But so I've co-opted that study, and I've done the same thing in dogs and cats with their owners. So it's a bonded human rather than a stranger, faking a knee injury. And I've filmed the dogs and cats. So I wasn't in the room. So I wasn't hopefully making too much of a confound in that regard, and filmed what the cats and dogs did in response, which is hilarious, as you can imagine. People are surprisingly good at I've asked people to be as method as they can in their acting, because they're doing, visual, they're doing sound, but I want them to smell in distress as well. It's quite hard to act to smell, but dogs and cats, of course, they use their sense of, because sometimes they use their sense of smell hugely in assessing their world and understanding their world. And so we definitely are letting off pheromones when we feel emotions, right? And there is a lovely study done by the Hungarian crew where they got people, I think, sadness, fear, a few other emotions, and they got swabs from under their arms. And then they just showed those swabs to dogs, and they looked at laterality, which nostril they sniffed at, because depending on which nostril, there's a crossover in the brain as to which side of the brain the processing is happening on. And emotions are more negative emotions are more likely to be processed on one side of the brain than the other. So they could show that they were using that nostril to sniff the negative emotion swabs.
God, and do you know, I've recently thought of this little joke about two dogs, and one of them going up to the ear and sniffing in the other and saying, "Do you sniff in your right nostril there, you old softy? God, there you go."
I must admit, I found everything that Karen said incredibly interesting. The information she's able to derive from just observing cats and dogs, absolutely amazing. I mean, I could go on about it all night, but I won't, because I know that you want to say something else. You want to bring someone else in, don't you?
I want to talk about Craig Tessiman. Do you remember when our friend Craig came in and told us all about Eddie, the monster truck tortoise? Do you remember
the bionic tortoise, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With his prosthetic limbs.
Incredible stuff. In fact, I think we've got that clip here. Let's have a listen.
I think we're very lucky on what we see, and the level of medicine and the level of veterinary care that we can give to those animals is just as good as what it is with cats and dogs. We had a tortoise in 3 weeks ago, that had, unfortunately, the owners had been out in the garden with the tortoise. The tortoise has been foraging and eating weeds. The parents thought that the tortoise had been brought in by the children, and the children thought that the parents had brought the tortoise in. He spent the night outside. The tortoise was then attacked by rats overnight, and he had quite a lot of extensive damage to his forelimbs. We've seen it before, and we've treated them, and everything's been grand. And we started to treat it with dressings and with wet to dries and everything else. It was doing really well. And then it came in for one of its checks, and there was no saving one of the front limbs. So we decided amputation was the best bet. And I will send you the link, or I'll try and find him in a second. This tortoise has now had both of his front legs amputated and has had wheels attached to him. And I think he's called Eddie the Monster Truck Tortoise. I'm going to try and find him now.
I think
and he's doing really, really well. But that level of care, we were able to perform that because the clients would let us go ahead and do the surgery and let us do the procedures. And I don't think people realize the extensive work that we can do. We're doing external fixators on rabbits quite regularly. We're doing intensive endoscopy work on parrots on a weekly basis. We do CTs on rabbits probably 3 times a week.
Wow.
There is an awful lot we can do. Our biggest issue that I'm fighting for at the minute is that is the insurance levels that you get on rabbits is only £2,000.
Yeah.
Working on a referral basis, a first opinion practice can probably run through £800 quite quickly. Then a referral, consultation, CT, surgery, and the insurance is gone. And then it's how committed the clients are to care after that. But our clients do that, and our clients let us go ahead and do this. I think if you search for Eddie Monster Truck Tortoise on Instagram, I think you'll find him. But I'll send you a link if you want to put it on the
brilliant
things. But yeah, that's our little success story that we've had in the last couple of weeks. That's gone completely viral online.
Mm-hmm. Is it ethical to attach wheels to your tortoise?
It's either that or it's going to scratch the front of its shell every time it walks. It's the same question: is it ethical to put prosthetics?
Yeah.
They do really well. We've spoken to the owners in depth, and they knew the care that was going to be needed. And you could see the tortoise trying to learn that if it pushed up too high on its back legs, it'd face plant the floor, and how far it can lift itself up to do it. And he's learned quite quickly, and he's zooming around the garden.
Talking of tortoises.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Wow. Yeah. Our moment of fame. Our moment of fame included on No Such Thing as a Fish.
I know, my favourite podcast.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
That was Chris Wilson, wasn't it?
It was. Talking about strapping vibrators to tortoises.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't the tortoise and the hare, was it? It was the tortoise and the rabbit.
And the rampant rabbit, it was.
Let's have a listen to that.
Literally just 2 weeks ago, I had, so I've got a pet tortoise that he was brought into work as a stray.
Oh, yes.
So I've now become, someone found him in their garden.
Feral tortoise running around central London.
It's what London's like, apparently.
One of our tortoises was brought in as a stray, and no one ever claimed him.
It's apparently a really common thing, and only when we were trying to find the owner did we find these massive databases of lost and found tortoises. Anyway, so I've basically become nominated as the practice's tortoise vet. as you do. So, and I had one brought in just the other week where he hadn't been eating very well. It wasn't associated with hibernation, and we did an X-ray, and he had 6 or 7 sort of significant sized stones in him, in his gastrointestinal tract, and she did say that he does bite at the stones and things. Do you two know this about how you get them out of a tortoise?
Okay, I do, but please do.
Educate me.
There's a really great, if you ever want a good laugh, there's a really lovely written case report on a tortoise that had a similar issue, where they used, I'm trying to think of what their wording was. I think it might have been a vibrating self-pleasure device, is what they referred to it in the paper as. And they strapped it to his plastrons underneath the tortoise. And they did this vibration therapy. It's legitimate if you call it a therapy. They did it like twice
a rampant rabbit for stagnant tortoise.
Well, the best thing about it was, do you know when you read a paper and it's got a product, you have to state the product's name afterwards.
Yeah.
And this one, amazingly, was called Rocks Off, and it's genuine. You can't write that. It's just perfect.
I know. I've read the article. You must read, listeners out there. You must read it.
If something's going to get you into reading journals, it'll be this one. I promise you.
It's an exercise in the most cautious writing I've ever seen, because whatever they did, they could not sexualize it.
Yeah.
They had to just give the facts, as lurid as it may be. Yeah. How on earth did they decide? That's the thing. They don't really give any history to it, do they? It has long been noticed that. No.
They did mention that. I think they would call it the tradition, or a traditional but unconventional method of putting the tortoise in a car and driving over
the bumpy tractor ride.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. A bumpy ride was simulated by music.
And special thanks to Samantha.
We did discuss at work whether we'd have a kind of like an honesty box and someone could just leave something in there for the tortoise.
Okay, guys, look, I've got another tortoise that eating stones. Where is it? Come on. Who's got it? Yeah. No batteries. Oh, come on, guys.
Yeah. But to me, that's kind of the joy of general practice. I mean, if you, no offense to any specialist, but you're not going to get thrown that curveball on a daily basis, are you? So, every day really is a school day when you.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got it here in the Tortoise News. Rocks off to get your rocks out. It's clear. It's written there. It's a one-line headline. Yeah.
I only found out that. Was it last year? 2 years ago, I had a tortoise that had eaten some stones, and one was clearly blocking the guts. And so I did a plastrotomy, and so cut a little hinged hole in a plastron and removed the stones, about 4 or 5, sutured the guts, wired and fiberglassed the plastron. Tortoise made a good recovery. Chatting to a reptile expert afterwards, and he said, "You should have got a rampant rabbit from Anne Summers." And you said, "What? What?" He gave me his answer.
I've been talking to your tortoises, and they've been discussing this at length. And he's going to forget getting the rocks because he hasn't got a vibrator to use.
Yeah.
If you get stones, he's going to cut you open.
Absolutely, no fun to be had here, they say.
Yeah, you've got to go and see Chris. Chris will sort it out.
Well, it was an interesting conversation to have. She's a very she's a lovely client. She's quite well to do, and I just thought, because I had started the consult by saying, look, I'm not a reptile specialist, and here's me now calling her saying, can you strap a dildo to your tortoise? I mean, it took some, like I said, like you said with the paper, it took some cautious wording to.
It really is an
Yeah.
exercise in good
Brilliant.
English. It's brilliant.
50. What a year it's been, and of course that was BBC with No Such Thing as a Fish, but that wasn't the only mention and the only person we've had on the BBC, and it wouldn't be right if we didn't look back over this year to somebody that seemed to be in the headlines all the time. Julian, oh God, where's he gone? Well,
yes, I'm afraid you just had to step out of the room. I've come on. I wanted to say.
Hello, BJ.
Hello, fans. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you very much for allowing your organ to be the voice of my political cadence this year, which in many ways has been a very very good, very successful year for me. Other of course than my ultimate complete and utter failure. But the rest of the year was very, very, very successful.
Steady on, BJ. You're telling the truth for a change.
I thought I would. I always do. I always tell the truth. Sometimes it's difficult to see what the truth is because I bluster. I suppose. I always have told a modicum of the truth. Not always. Obviously, yes, but sometimes I think.
Hang on a minute. Is that a wig?
You got me, Mike.
What?
It's been me all along.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. No, really. Boris never actually came on. It's always been me. Sorry to have shocked you.
I don't know what
it's
to
a
say.
bit awkward now.
Well,
you're voting Labour next year.
Yeah, okay. Well, whatever. It's other political parties are available. I'm devastated. Absolutely devastated.
Yeah. What's really loony party for me?
No, I'm not. I'm not discussing that now. I want to carry on with our year review.
Okay. Okay. Sean McCormack.
Oh, Sean. He does quite a lot on BBC as well, doesn't he?
He does. He was brilliant. He was fantastic. He's part of the bringing beavers back to Ealing.
Yes.
And I don't think he said that without us giggling.
I was going to say, I can't quite remember, but I think I struggled with the concept of some of that, which is probably my filthy mind or something along those lines.
I think we were a bit smutty. But also he gave us tips on how to get robins to eat out of our hands. We tried that.
I remember that with the worms.
Yeah. I'd love to say I tried it and it worked, but I haven't.
Let's have a listen to that.
2016 to 2022 is quite the journey, and we've kind of focused on lots of different species, but the big exciting news right now is that we are putting in an application to Natural England to reintroduce beavers to Ealing in an closed trial. So we won't be just setting them free into the Brent and waving them goodbye down to the Thames. We're going to actually
Ealing High Street, off they go.
Off the Broadway onto the Central Line.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have that reaction where they're like, what? Like, I thought beavers were these like wild landscape creatures and things, but actually urban beavers exist across Europe and North America, Munich, Berlin, Vancouver. But yeah, beavers are only gone from the UK 400 years, which in kind of evolutionary times is the blink of an eye, really. And we're just not used to...
longer than the dodo.
Yeah. But we're just not used to having them around or what they do. And, there's a lot of hesitation from anything new in the environment when it comes to wildlife. But yeah, we're putting in this application and basically it's about, I guess, three things. One is seeing how we can kind of integrate and interact with beavers in an urban setting, because whether we like it or not, beavers are on the way back in Britain and they will emerge in cities and towns, and we need to understand how to live alongside them. So that's the one big thing. It's like, actually, let's do this before it becomes a problem. Let's do it so we can see how we can interact with beavers. And actually, most urban beaver populations are not very problematic at all. And the second one is for kind of studying their habitat improvements and biodiversity improvements with them. We've reintroduced harvest mice, which are Britain's smallest rodent already to Ealing. We believe they've been gone for 30 or 40 years, but with the rangers, and the kind of different management of our green space. We've good habitat for them now. And we were thinking next on the list would be try and reintroduce water voles.
Ealing cats will love you.
I know. We're putting all the rodents back, right?
So we've got some water voles around near us in Arundel.
Have you? Arundel, yeah, the WWT reserve, right?
Yeah, they're beautiful. Yeah. Well, they did the population dipped for a while because they think that weasels or
mink, was it?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. So I mean, we thought about doing that, but that's very kind of labor intensive. But actually, if we bring beavers back first, beavers create the perfect wetlands and ecosystems for water voles and a lot of other things. And one of the big threats to water voles is mink, North American mink, that have been released from fur farms, and they're designed to eat muskrats in North America, but they can eat water voles here, and water voles have no kind of defense from them. So putting beavers back first.
Although if they put an extra thick overcoat and their galoshes on, then the minks can't spot them so well.
Yeah, suits of armor a little,
yeah. I've read Wind in the Willows, so I know that Ratty is a water vole.
Ratty is actually a vole, yeah.
He always wears his galoshes.
Yeah.
So that no one can recognise his footprints.
We'll take that into account in our water vole reintroduction project for sure. But yeah, that's one of the reasons put water voles back once beavers have created this new kind of elaborate wetland system. And then the third reason is the kind of human benefits. So the area that we're planning to enclose and have them on for 5 years and study the effects, it kind of is a sunken area, and downstream of it is a high flood risk area. So actually by putting beavers on there and them damming the systems and creating wetland, they create much more water absorption capacity, and they'll hold water. And the theory is that they will reduce flood risk downstream in kind of flash flood and road runoff events. And they'll also improve the water quality coming out of that site. So yeah. We want to see what urban communities, are like and engaging with rewilding and kind of nature-based solutions and things. So
I want to learn, because I've seen a photograph of you with a robin on your hand.
Oh yeah.
I want to learn how you did that.
That's very easy, guys. There's one very simple secret to that trick. I've done it loads of times with lots of robins. No. It's mealworms.
Yes.
Mealworms.
So mealworms are basically like crack to robins.
Yeah.
So if you have a robin in your garden, robins are, very tame of garden birds. And the reason for that, do you know about why UK robins are the gardener's friend?
No.
In Europe, on the continent, they are quite a shy woodland species, and they follow around wild boar rootling in the earth. And basically, we have replaced that proxy for wild boar with our garden shovels or spades digging in the garden. The English robins, UK robins, basically see a large mammal turning earth, and they're hardwired to take advantage of that opportunity and feed on the earth that's left behind. So our garden robins almost are treating us as wild boar. So if you have a garden robin and you're out in the garden quite a bit, just get a little pot of live mealworms or live waxworms, keep them in your pocket and just throw them down for the robin occasionally, and they'll associate you with them. And then gradually you can just throw them closer and closer, and the robin is very bold. It'll come in and eventually you'll just take them off your hand. I've done that in like the space of 2 or 3 days, sometimes with robins.
Right. I assume you're just sort of singing that Disney song.
I am basically Snow White, but I also use mealworms.
I didn't want to say.
Well, Christmas, of course, is not really Christmas without giving of gifts, is it?
It's not. No. That's what it's all about.
Do you remember Lacey Pitcher, vet nurse we had?
Yes, I do. Spoke about neurodiversity, didn't she?
She did. She spoke a little bit about neurodiversity, but the concept of her pay it forwards, the veterinary pay it forwards.
Yes, veterinary pay it forward. Yeah, what a great concept.
Mind blown.
Very
mind blown. Let's just remind ourselves of that clip, because I think it's not only inspirational, it's really warm and giving in more ways than one.
Apt for Christmas, isn't it?
The community started building, and we set up an initiative called Veterinary Pay It Forward. So I didn't necessarily care about me, but I cared that someone the other end of the country might also be feeling that no one saw them, or they were having a rough time and no one recognised. And so what we started doing is sending very individual packages curated for what people liked, anonymously to any members of the veterinary community. So it didn't matter if they were vets, nurses, receptionists, practice managers, anybody. And they arrived unannounced at practices across the country, so that the recipient that opened them and received them felt seen and valued and appreciated.
Okay.
And because they didn't know where the packages came from, they couldn't say thank you. So the idea was that they pay the kindness forward. And so all of a sudden, this ripple effect across the country started happening, and people were sending, the way we kind of explain it is like a virtual hug or high five. Sometimes it's just you've worked your butt off with a case and everything's gone really well, and you just want someone to see that you noticed it. And one of the surprising things that I'd assumed it would be students that had felt unappreciated or unseen sometimes, but actually we got lots of nominations for people that were senior, so practice managers and clinical directors whose teams didn't know how to say, I see you, I appreciate you, without it feeling condescending or false. And so this movement started rippling, and so Veterinary Pay It Forward grew substantially. And during the time that it was growing, I had essentially had a breakdown that most of the community didn't know about, because I was the very smiley person, quite extroverted, had a good job, everything looked good on the outside. But as the community grew, people got to know me. And so when I started this huge trip, they were completely rooting for me, because I'd been transparent, thinking, well, I'm starting to feel better, and the thought that someone else somewhere might still be feeling nothing, we need to talk about that.
Okay.
And so we did. And it's not going to change the world, but for some people in that moment of time, it did. So I was just blown away by the number of people who were like, well, you've helped with the logistics of this, and now we want to do something to help you back. So it would have been, I think, when I got lost in New Zealand and I didn't have anywhere to stay that night. So I'd messaged a friend to say, I don't suppose you know anybody in New Zealand, just start to work out the area, just to almost calm myself. And within an hour or two, I got a text message saying, oh, if you can just get to this town, someone will come and pick you up. I've got friends at a vet practice. They've asked their team, someone will come and help you. And that's kind of a bit of a bolt out of the blue. It just makes you go, wow, how many professions and careers could you know that actually would be there for you? And there's just something really special about veterinary medicine, where we've got this big extended family who just kind of go, I get it. What can I do? How can I help? What do you need? And it's been amazing. So I've kind of embraced it ever since, because the connections we make are so important, and we underappreciate them so often. But I hadn't realised until I'd started travelling how many people would have been there the entire time. And if I'd have said to someone, I'm not okay, would have been there. They just didn't know.
What platform is this on?
So it's Veterinary Pay It Forward. We basically set up really, really simply, very high tech. I was just a woman with a dog and a notepad that I took everywhere, and we ran through Facebook, and people would message and say, we've lost a patient today. The clinician worked really, really hard. The vet worked really, really hard, and they're blaming themselves. They didn't do anything wrong, but they just feel they must have missed something. And I just want them to know they're appreciated, and that we saw that. And so with their details of the practice and the person's name, they'd send some pointers. So it could be something really obscure. We had one lady that really loved Harry Potter. And so those kind of notes go in the notebook. And when someone wanted to do something nice for someone, they'd just message and say, can I have a name off the list? So they might never have met this person at all. And they just get some small details. And then they would go out and they would personally curate this package to arrive for another person somewhere else in the country, knowing that they were going to make their day. And it just lifted the entire teams when they landed, because no one knew they were coming. So it's really, really simple, but it just made such a difference to lots of people and was a huge, huge shift for me. I couldn't say I would still be here without the community that looked after me. And that's like, I'm so lucky, so lucky. I think we're at 5,000 parcels now.
Wow.
Yeah.
5,000.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then, yeah, we've got a few thousand people in the group, but people dip in and join and leave as they feel they want to. And it's just, and I think it's really important that we don't differentiate between clinical and non-clinical. And all members of the team, whether you are vet nurse, clinical director, one of the most amazing parcels we ever sent went to a gentleman that works at a crematorium, and he visited the team every week, and he always checked it. If he noticed someone wasn't okay or wasn't their normal cheery self, he checked on the team and he got to know them because he'd been going there for a really long time.
Right.
And they messaged and said, I know he's not a member of the veterinary team, but can we? Like he won't let us carry anything that's too heavy, and he always checks we're okay. And that was lovely because I hadn't thought about it then, but who says thank you to those people? Who says thank you to and so it's been amazing. But it kind of brings home, and when you see some of the nominations that come through, the compassion in our profession is huge.
We had our old mate Matt Rendell on again, didn't we?
We did indeed.
That was great. He told us that great story about, was it Mangabeys and the relationships with the local farmers.
Yeah, that's right. And he posed that fascinating question, that really interesting philosophical question, didn't he, about taking care of the environment versus helping human populations who are already struggling in many cases.
Yeah. How do we balance the two up? I can't really remember. Let's watch it again.
Yeah.
So let's not beat around the bush here. Though, in effect, the Mangabeys were wiped out of this area because of human-animal conflict.
Yeah, and for loss of habitat. So, and there's always this thing everywhere I've ever worked where you get what's considered conflict animals. There's always a persecution against those individuals, and it's understandable because often the people don't have a lot, and if they come and there's a tiger eating their goats, or there's a mangabey still in their crops, then you can understand them being really angry and seeing that is a bad thing. And the translocation of conflict animals is really, really interesting and basically doesn't work. So I think often the people are at their wits' end and decide that the only thing to do is to start taking on the primates and starting to remove them from that area, which is a shame. But you can see how it would get to that point. It's understandable.
Sure.
Absolutely. I remember how I changed my attitude towards foxes overnight. When the fox killed all my chickens.
Yeah.
And that was, it took me quite a long time to sort of get the balance back in my mind that, the fox has got a right as well, and he's hungry, and there they are.
Yeah, and I like the way that we now start to challenge those things properly. I think the days of just assuming that what we do is right, I think, is gone. I think we always question everything now, which is, it
Sure.
makes us sound science. So
Imposing our will just isn't the right way, is it? There's got to be a more holistic change to it.
We have lots of challenges as well, because I think the whole kind of perspective of captive animals, I think, is changing, and I think as time goes on, it will continue to change. So it makes for an interesting landscape for sure.
Do you know, Mike, it struck me as we were chatting to Matt, all blokes together, having a bit of a laugh. We do rib each other fairly endlessly. And
I'm very often the butt of your jokes.
As I am of yours, and happy to be. But not everyone's happy all the time, are they? It's very easy to get a foot wrong, to say something that you think is in jest or inconsequential, and people can take it very much to heart.
Yeah.
And we had Janika Patel telling us about that, didn't she? Microaggressions.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot, and I think you're right. It's important that we should stick together and support each other. And admittedly, there is a time and place occasionally for the odd jest.
There is.
But that can come across as very cruel, can't it?
It can, because as much as we think everyone finds us amusing, and that they've got an escape room here, if they don't, they can just turn the wireless off, can't they? Listen to something else. But in a workplace, you can't turn it off. You have to put up with what people are saying, and so we should be very much more mindful when we're talking to our colleagues, our friends, and even people we haven't really got to know yet. But what we say isn't being disrespectful.
Absolutely. Let's have a listen. Let's have a listen to part of Janika's story.
It's common, and also I think to some extent subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that say these things don't realise they're saying it, or the actual double meaning behind it, which I think can be, as I said, it's hard to identify and to tackle because of that. Because if someone's like, when people ask me, where are you from? And they say, where are you from originally? Some people can just genuinely be curious, like what my story is. They don't mean any harm or malice behind it, but some people do, as I said, intentionally or unintentionally. Some people do, and I sometimes take it the wrong way, because it makes me feel, are they questioning whether I have a right to be in this country? I'm born here, I'm raised here, but it just makes me feel that they wouldn't ask my white friend the same question.
Well, you had that awful experience when you were 8 with those boys outside the shop, didn't you? So not really surprising that you'd be sensitive to these statements. Is there? Do you think there's a culture that can't be changed in this generation, or do you think it is something that people can be made aware of and will strive to think before they speak?
Yeah, I think the latter, that we can try to unlearn those subconscious traits where possible, and try to be more mindful of what we say, how we say it. Yeah, I have had people say to me, well then you're oppressing our free speech, or why do we have to think about everything that comes out of our mouths? I'm not forcing you to, you don't have to, but this is my experience, and this is how I felt when people have said these things to me. We all go on about being kind and treating others as we'd like to be treated ourselves. So if some people who've said that to me, I say, well, you've asked me my thoughts and feelings, this is how I feel, and these are the experiences I've had. I would advise you, and I want you to learn from it and not say the same things to other people like me, but it's up to you at the end of the day to learn that, to do more research on that, to reflect on yourself and make those changes. I am seeing people do that, but
yeah, I think it must be quite brave to call people out on this sort of thing. Do you actively call people out if they say something like that?
I try my best to.
Okay, because that takes a lot of courage.
It does, and sometimes I don't have that courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I've become more courageous as I've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly when I was younger, when I was in university, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't speak up.
Right.
Now I do start to call things out. I find myself calling people out that I'm familiar with, who I know. So my work colleagues, my family, my friends. I still struggle with calling it out to strangers, sort of clients or member of the public. I still find that quite uncomfortable.
That can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I suppose you're thinking, well, I don't want to alienate this client. I don't want to make them think, oh, she's bristly. I don't like her as a vet anymore because she's made me look small and stupid, or made me look racist, or made me look a whole heap of things. But there must be some way of letting people know. Maybe people watching this podcast will think, I'm going to think about what I say in future.
I need to ask you this, Janika, because you said calling friends and family out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that's a good place to start when you're unpacking these things and having those realizations yourself. I think it starts sort of grassroots up. Like you've got to then call these things out in environments that you're comfortable with to start off with, and then work your way up to calling people out in general. And that's how I've started doing it. And I've called out family members that have made racist remarks and viewpoints during the Christmas dinner table. I've called friends out for remarks that they've made about certain races or certain minority groups. I think that's really, really important to do.
Interesting.
So we've had some really, really good 60-second CPD. Not all of it was veterinary related.
I'm very grateful for that. Do you remember?
I'm very grateful for it too.
Do you remember the concept of the gratitude bomb?
Yeah, I love that idea.
Summarised by Emily Holmes in her 60-second CPD.
Yeah, do you know that I think it's so powerful. Just saying thank you.
Let's have a listen to it.
Emily Holmes, 60 seconds on practicing gratitude, starting now.
So the art of practicing gratitude is something that is very simple. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need a notebook or anything. You literally can just think about this in your head. You can do this at the start of the day or at the end of the day, but it's essentially what it says in the tin. Think of 3 things that you are grateful for in your day. There is scientific evidence that's out there that proves that practicing gratitude actually helps to lift your mindset and helps you look at things in a more positive way rather than in a negative way. And another quick one as well is if you are really finding that you're really struggling with your mindset, is you can actually do what one of my friends quoted as a gratitude bomb. So you essentially sit in a room, close your eyes or leave your eyes open and look for everything in the room that you are grateful for. And helps you sort of stay grounded, keep yourself, sort of brings yourself back into the present moment and just helps you take over that mindset that sort of got you.
Wow.
Very
yeah,
good.
I love it.
A good summary of practicing gratitude.
A gratitude bomb, was it?
Yes.
Gratitude bomb. Wow.
So what are you grateful for this year, Mike?
Me, I'm grateful. I don't know.
But, you know, actually, you do. It is difficult, isn't it? Sometimes I don't feel grateful for anything. Sometimes I don't feel grateful that there's even air to breathe. Sometimes I just feel really mad with the world. But occasionally, when I'm feeling that way, someone will open a door for me, or a nurse will hand me some blood results, or help me inject a dog, and I'll say, oh, thanks very much for that. And I suddenly feel a bit better. And I suddenly think, that's gratitude going both ways. Because thank you gives a bond.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? So what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for a whole heap of things this year. Too many, really, to mention. So I'm grateful for the colour of the leaves sometimes. I'm grateful for a cup of tea in the morning, whether it's made by me or my wife. I'm grateful for my nurses for being amazing. I'm grateful for my clients for coming to see me and for letting me into their world a little bit to make their pets better. I'm grateful for being your mate.
And you should be.
Yeah, there we go.
and are yours. It's a concept that I will readily admit I struggle with. Except that I sit here sometimes feeling quite bored and a little bit lonely sometimes. But I haven't got missiles raining down on my head. I can go and make myself a cup of tea. I can have a drink. I can go to the fridge. I've got food. So I struggle with the concept because I take so much for granted. But in comparison to so many people, I have so much.
Yeah.
And I suppose, if anything, I'm grateful for all of that.
There's a lot to be grateful for. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
Glass of mulled wine here because it's Christmas.
Well, I'd have a toss of rum here, but I've finished it. But I'm very grateful for the fact that all I have to do is go to the kitchen and top my glass up.
A lot to be grateful for.
Indeed. There's a lot to be grateful for, isn't there?
An awful lot. We just have to remember it.
Yeah, and I thought that was summarised beautifully by Emily in her 60-second CPD. And 60-second CPD this year. Oh, wow.
We've had some blinders, haven't we? We've had my RCVS CPD log is full. Really is. We've had some really good ones. And we've had some that I haven't felt able to log for my vet CPD.
Oh, come on. Some of the different ones were the best.
Well, yeah. I must admit, I've used the others, but I haven't necessarily used them for my veterinary CPD. I'm thinking here of Anna Mercer. You know, the ferret
nurse. Yeah.
Do you remember her CPD?
That was on hummus, wasn't it?
It was on hummus, that's right. Yeah.
60-second CPD on hummus, starting now. Let's have a listen.
Yeah. It was brilliant. It was about where chickpeas were grown, how to make hummus.
Shush. No, be quiet. Let's get it. Let's just listen to it.
Okay. Yeah. No spoilers.
Well, you would have thought, wouldn't you, that I've got this great opportunity to maybe teach some people about ferrets.
Right.
And I've not gone for that.
Oh, okay.
I've actually done my 60-second CPD on hummus.
On hummus?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
For listeners, Julian was just taking a sip of his whiskey there to ease his throat. And as Anna said, hummus, I think was that a sort of a representation of hummus spraying out of your mouth as you
a little bit's come out of my nose and a very small bit out of my right tear duct too, which stings quite a lot now. I wasn't expecting that. Although you did say in your letter to us or to Alicia, our producer, that you felt that your addiction to hummus was beyond your control now, and you were thinking of seeking some help.
No, I'm not even going to get any help.
You're not. No, you just got to accept it.
So is this part of your therapy then?
Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is.
Okay.
But I'm still not going to give it up. I can't give it up.
Anna Mercer, ferret nurse, 60 seconds on hummus, starting now.
Okay. The word hummus means chickpea in Arabic. The earliest mention of the spread dates back to Egypt during the 13th century. It is low in saturated fat and high in fibre and protein. Hummus also offers complex carbohydrates to make you feel satisfied and full. Hummus contains some omega-3 fats, calcium, magnesium, iron and zinc, as well as most of the B vitamins. The sesame seeds in the tahini also reduce inflammation. The largest serving of hummus was 10,452 kilograms. This hummus was made by around 300 student chefs in Beirut. Its basic ingredients are chickpeas, sesame, lemon, and garlic. Studies show that those who eat hummus tend to weigh less and have better regulated blood sugar than those who don't. Hummus eaters also have a lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, reduced risk of diabetes, heart disease, and certain cancers. India is the largest producer of chickpeas. A serving of hummus is approximately 1 to 2 tablespoons, unless you're me, and then it's normally 1 to 2 tubs. Flavours include beetroot, roasted pepper, sun-dried tomato, smoked lemon, just to name a few.
Wow.
If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and buy some hummus and sort my blood pressure out.
We've got some hummus in the fridge. I might just go and
Yeah,
make some.
see, it's the magical cure, really.
I love it. Do you make your own hummus?
Pardon?
Do you make your own hummus?
Well, I did quite a lot, but I have to confess, it's never been quite as good as some of the bought ones I've had.
So which is your favourite bought hummus then?
Oh, well, it'd have to be between the smoked beetroot hummus. Or there's a hummus which is made of, it's going to sound really disgusting, but it's pea protein hummus.
And that's just a few of our episodes from this year. We've had so many great guests on, so many great stories, so many fantastic CPDs.
I've been very grateful for the whole thing.
There you go, you see, something else to be grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been good. And if you've enjoyed it, please, it really helps us if you subscribe. So on whatever platform you're listening to us or watching us, please just tick that subscribe button because it really does make a difference to us.
It really does.
Yeah. So,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And may your dog go with you.
May your dog go with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And cut.